Hey guys, it's Mrs. B again. This is more of an pre-algebra targeted, Math 8 targeted video today. We're going to talk about proportional reasoning and how to solve a proportion. This is kind of our setup for working with percents and then working with percent of increase and percent of decrease. So let's look at kind of the basic mechanics of how we solve a proportion. Now, we do this with solving equations too, but we're just going to focus just on proportions. Now, we got to know what a proportion is. A proportion would help if you could see what I was writing on now, wouldn't it? All right, so give me just a second. A proportion is a comparison of two ratios. Okay, so let's look at this. A ratio is comparing two things. So a ratio would be something like 2 inches is 2 miles on a map or something like that, okay? One thing to another. A proportion is where we take and we say if 1 inch is 6 miles on the map, then 3 inches is 18 miles on the map. And then we would check to see if those two sides match up. And the way we check is we do cross multiplication. A lot of people call this the butterfly, the crisscross, whatever you want to call this. What we're going to do is we're going to take these two numbers and multiply together. 1 times 18 gives me 18. And then we're going to take the other two top to bottom. 3 times 6 is 18. Are these two numbers the same? Yes, it's a proportion. But what if I gave you something and I said, okay, is it a proportion? And I did something like 9/7 and, I don't know, 63/42. Now my numbers are a little big here, but we can do the math. Is this a proportion? I don't know, let's see. Is this a proportion? 9 times 42. Well, 9 times 2 is 18. 9 times 4 is 36 plus 1 is 37. Okay. Now 63 times 7. Let's see, 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 6 is 42, plus 2 is 44. Are these two numbers the same? They're not equal, so this is not a proportion. Now, that's part of proportional reasoning. Do the two things I'm asking you to compare fall in that same ratio? Sometimes people say, do they come out to the same, do they all simplify to the same fraction? Do they all simplify to the same decimal? That's all great and awesome if you have two full ratios. But what happens if you have something like this? You go 16/12 equals x over 3. Well, there's a problem. I don't have 4 numbers here to deal with. But it doesn't change my process. The same thing, I'm going to cross multiply because I want to get rid of those fractions. I want to kind of simple it down a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is cross multiply. And I always shorten multiply because I like my notes shorthand. When I cross multiply, I'm going to have 16 times 3. And I'm going to have x times 12. So I'm going to write this a little simpler. I've got 12x equals 16 times 3. Well, 3 times 6 is 18. It's 48. Okay. Now, 12x equals 48. 12 times something gives me 48. Well, this is like those equations we did. How do I separate the 12 from the x? Well, if 12 times x is 48, how do you get that x by itself? You do the opposite. You divide by 12. Now, these cancel out. The 12 on the top and the 12 on the bottom cancel out and leave the x behind. 48 divided by 12 is 4. If I were to check this out, double check my work, I'm taking 16 over 12, and I'm replacing x with 4, and I've got 4 over 3. Well, let's check this with cross multiplication, see what happens. 16 times 3 we know is 48. 4 times 12 is 48. My two sides equaled, so x is my correct answer, and I've got a proportion. I know how to finish off my proportion. So let's look at another one. 26 over W equals 5 over 6. Okay. Same thing, we're going to cross multiply and then we're going to divide. 26 times 6, 5 times W. So let's look, I've got 5W equals, 6 times 6 is 36, 156. Ooh. So now let's look at this. I'm going to divide by 5 to get my W by itself. So W equals 5. 5 goes into 15 3 times with nothing left over. 5 goes to 6 once with 1 left over. 5 goes into 10 twice. All right, had to do my math without a calculator. So now with proportions, you can get decimal answers. The quickest way to check this would be to go to your calculator, okay? Now, let's look at another one. A over 9 equals 14 over 63. Now, it doesn't matter where your variable is, we're still following the same process. We're going to cross multiply. So I get 63A equals 126. I'm going to divide by 63. Now, I have to cheat a little bit and get my calculator out. Now, if you're looking for apps on a calculator, if you don't have a calculator handy, there are all kinds of awesome apps that you can get on your phone. If you're doing it in school, Desmos is one. It has a scientific and a graphing calculator app. There's one called Wabbit Emu. That's the one I use the most. It's right here. My collection of things in my phone right here. I have, this is a calculator. This is Desmos Graphing. This is Desmos Scientific. And this is Wabbit Emu. Oops, my phone here. This is Wabbit Emu. This is the one I use the most. And this one gets me an emulator of a TI-84 Plus. And there's different versions you could get. And this is the one I use because I'm most comfortable with it. Okay. And because my brain is a little slow tonight, I'm going to do 126 divided by 63. And I got 2. So A is 2. If you don't want to go get an app, an outside app, most phones come with a calculator anyway. And this is my This is my calculator. And I could do the same thing. 126 divided by 63. And I get 2. Okay. Now, this is as far as I'm going to go with these. I'm going to give you 2 more examples. What I want you to do is what we've always done. I want you to write down the examples, pause the video, work the examples, and then turn the video back on and check your answers, okay? I have to hunt down my examples. I'm sorry, guys. So I've got n over 6 equals 19 over 30. and I've got 4x over 5 equals 84 over 15. So take just a minute, pause the video, work these two problems, and then start the video back to check your answers. Thanks for coming back. I hope you didn't get too frustrated. These are trying to follow along. Remember, we are following our process. We're going to cross multiply, and then we're going to divide. So now I'm going to cross multiply. That's 30 times n, and 19 times 6. So that's 30n equals 114. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 30 because that's what's in front of the n, and I want the n by itself. And I get n equals 3.8. Now this is one I had to use my calculator with because the numbers are kind of big, and you know, we get to the point where we don't want to get ourselves too frustrated with our math. So if the calculations get frustrating, pull out your calculator. Let's look at the other one. 4x times 15 and 5 times 84. Okay, well here I've got 4x times 15. This is 4 times x times 15. Well, I can simplify this a little bit. I can do 4 times 15 is 60. So now I have 60x, and then I got to do 5 times 84, and I get 420. So I've done my cross multiply. Now let's do our divide. Divide both sides by 60 so that I get my x by itself, and x equals 420 divided by 60, which is 7. So guys, proportional reasoning. If you want more practice, go to Google, go to DuckDuckGo, whatever you need to go to, type in solve proportions practice, and there will be all kinds of things that come up. If you have any more questions, please leave me comments. Thanks for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you next time.